Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to be doing a horror topic that a lot of people remember from my older channel when I did movie reviews. And I'm going to be touching base on some horror franchises that I'm going to be revisiting. And it's not going to interfere with news and rumors of wrestling, but I wanted to go in and talk about some old horror films that I really started watching again after years of not seeing them. Today I'll be talking about the 1980 film Friday the 13th that was directed by Sheen Cunningham. It basically starred Betsy Palmer and Adrienne King. This movie, still to this day, is one of the best movies ever made. And in 1980, the director Sheen Cunningham, he wanted to give us something as good, if not better, than Halloween that came out a few years previously. And they were trying to give you a new story that they hoped that would surpass Halloween, despite Friday the 13th is by nowhere surpasses Halloween, and it doesn't actually fall on par with it because they're two different films. And Friday the 13th really is the story about revenge. And it takes place at a summer camp called Camp Crystal Lake. And it centers around a group of people coming together to reopen the camp on orders from their boss, Steve Christie. And not many people that are visiting the camp really know about the camp's ugly history. They don't know about the boy who drowned in 1957. They don't know about the two people killed in 1958. And, when the camp basically is about to be reopened, there is a mysterious killer that's lurking throughout the woods. And, it basically becomes a game of them stalking everybody, killing them off until it comes down to the last remaining counselor, which is Alice, played by Adrienne King. And Alice is introduced to a woman named Mrs. Voorhees, Pamela Voorhees, who was played by Betsy Palmer. And then when she emerges for the first time, she basically seemed like a concerned citizen, and then she quickly transforms into a psychopathic killer. And we soon learn that she is the mother of the boy who drowned in Camp Crystal Lake 1957. The boy's name was Jason Voorhees, and Mrs. Voorhees worked at the camp, and she held people responsible for her son's death. Pamela Voorhees is not as strong as Michael Myers. She's not going into the dreams of people like Freddy Krueger. She is someone who went deeply nuts because she lost her son. And she has since killed a lot of people that come to the camp. She's caused sabotage. She's caused all kinds of problems to try to keep the camp closed. And Alice, she soon gets herself into a cat and mouse game. She soon is thrusted into a game to where she must try to survive. And of course, it comes down to the final fight on the beach where she decapitates Mrs. Voorhees, and then she gets into a canoe and then goes across the lake. And then a child, Jason, emerges and pulls them out of the water, pulls her out of the water, or in the water out of the canoe. And then they flash and show her at the hospital, that being Alice. And she says, "Did you find the boy Jason who pulled me into the water?" And the sheriff or chief says, "Ma'am, we didn't find any boy." And she says, "Then he's still there." And then they show the camera zooming into the water, and then they roll the credits. This movie was absolutely suspenseful. It went over so well. It's basically a woman's revenge, but she resorts to brutal methods on trying to get her vengeance. And she's so gone in the head to where she's basically not aware that the people she's trying to kill had absolutely nothing to do with Jason's supposed death. And that's what basically this was. It was a woman who had terrorized the camp. She resorted to sabotage, she resorted to killings. And this movie for 1980 had some really gruesome killings. I mean, let's be honest. But its biggest flaw with this movie that I really feel was what held it back is that we did have quite a lot of off camera kills. Like the scene where the woman's going out to the archery range in the rain after Mrs. Voorhees tricks her to coming out of the cabin. And then later on, we see her body and we don't see what happened to her because she just sees a figure and then she screams. And then the camera zooms in on Alice and Bill. And basically, that was really what held this movie back, the off camera kills. But the ones we did see, I think my favorite kill is what happened to Marcy because she was, inside the cabin. She's looking at herself in the mirror. She hears all these noises and she goes over to the shower and then she's opening the curtains and sees nothing. And you could see the shadowy thing of an object. It's emerging up above her, and then she turns around and she got an axe right in the head and just fell instantly to the ground. Very brutal kill, but it also showed that Mrs. Voorhees was very stealthy. She went out into the rain, she killed people off, and was not even affected by the bad weather that it hit. The characters were very bland. I really didn't see a lot of good things about them. I mean, they were just your typical people coming to a camp to try to reopen it, and of course, we know what happened. And the only character I liked in this that was actually funny was Ned. He was the comedian out of the group. You know, he's running around pretending to be an Indian and he sees this police officer on the bike and he's like, oh shit. And the kills were good. The effects and the blood and the gore were actually pretty good. A little fun fact about this movie: when Betsy Palmer had auditioned for the role of Mrs. Voorhees, originally she wanted nothing to do with this movie because she said the script was crap. She said that she basically hated it, but she needed a vehicle and she took this role, and the role that she crapped on ended up being probably the most memorable role that she ever had in her long, lengthy career. I kid you not, when you see Mrs. Voorhees in this movie, you think to yourself that there's no way that Betsy Palmer could have played a psychotic killer, and she was so caring and sweet, and then she just morphs into this crazy woman who wants to kill people because she deems them responsible for her son's death. Like, she basically said, look what you did to him, and she targets at Alice, and Alice must fend her off, and then she's basically talking in two people, herself and then a child version of Jason, where she's like, don't let her get away, mommy. Kill her. And she's like, don't worry, Jason. I won't. And that's really what it was. It's just great acting on the part of Betsy Palmer. Loved her in this movie. She is definitely missed to this day. Movie had a great suspenseful cliffhanger. Absolutely a fantastic film. And I am going to give this movie 4 out of 5 stars. It's definitely one of my favorite horror films, but it's not my favorite Friday the 13th. But it did, in fact, be the film that would launch an entire franchise, which I'm going to be covering. This movie was absolutely good for its time in 1980. Very good movie, 4 out of 5 stars, Friday the 13th. This has been my movie review on it, guys. Tell me what you think in the comments section. Thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you later.